President Trump blaming Democrats for high consumer prices during a speech in Pennsylvania, even as his own policies have pushed costs higher. Mr. Trump says former President Biden caused the high prices, and he's now bringing them down. But inflation began accelerating after Trump announced sweeping tariffs. Joining me now is Tommy Aiello, Senior Director of Government Affairs at National Taxpayers Union, to dig into more about how Americans are feeling about the economy and what government policies actually can help. Good morning to you, Tommy. Your group has found that affordability is a key issue for Americans. We keep seeing that in polls. Do you think the president believes that?
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me. And, I don't think you need polls or focus groups to know that prices are too high. If you talk to any working class person or any person, they'll tell you that the grocery store prices are ridiculous, housing costs are out of control, and electricity is skyrocketing. So now that we know all of these things to be true, what can we do to solve it, right? The president has a point that under the previous administration, inflation was so much higher. Prices have certainly come down. If you look at gas prices, for example, it's under $3 a gallon. That's a great story to tell. Higher tax refunds will go out next year because of the president's big tax cut law. But there's so much more to be done. And I think tariffs are playing a big part in why inflation remains so sticky and so much higher than where it could be.
And we've seen some moves to try to mitigate some of the impacts there of tariffs. Are there other things that you see the Trump administration doing that might ultimately, in the long run, help the economy and bring prices down?
I think the biggest thing is the president's one big beautiful bill, right? This mega law that he signed back in July. It has a really good mix of pro-growth tax policies that will turbocharge business investment in the United States. It'll put more money back in people's pockets. And I think as they deal with this inflation situation, part of it is high prices. The other part of it is wages. Wages are actually growing higher than inflation, which is a very good thing. And when people file their taxes next year, they could expect an average of about $3,600 higher tax refund than they would have normally gotten. And remember, this law was set to expire just in a couple of weeks, but thankfully the administration and Republicans in Congress were to get it done early. That way businesses and people can prepare accordingly for that. But of course, this tariff situation, it's having a real impact, right? Coffee prices are up 20%. Artificial Christmas trees up 20%, and everything else seems to be up in the grocery store because we have these international supply chains that simply just can't exist on our own.
Yeah, it does seem like the president can say the economy is doing well, affordability is not an issue, but then every time you go to the grocery store, you see prices, or you go online to buy that Christmas tree that you want, and it's suddenly 20% more. You really can't argue with that.
No, and it's a real problem. And I think the administration understands that. President Trump won in large part in the last election because of the affordability problem. So I think he's acutely aware of how politically sensitive this could be for him. And I do think the administration is trying hard to solve it, right? Gas prices is one of them. It's so important to have American energy dominance because energy is so important to the average American, right? It's not just the fuel you put in your car, which is now below $3 a gallon, but it's the diesel fuel to transport produce and other packaged goods to the grocery store. As fuel prices come down, we can expect to see grocery store prices come down as well, and then hopefully that'll translate into lower prices across the board as well.
And do you have, speaking of gas prices, do you have an indication of how long they might stay affordable? I know this is a tough thing to predict, but a lot of people planning road trips for the holidays.
I don't see gas prices going up anytime soon, to be honest with you. They may fluctuate on a daily or weekly basis, but I think the trend will continue to go downward. And I think it'll go downward for a number of reasons. One, the president's big mega law, that includes so many good things for the oil and gas industry. It lowers the taxes that drillers have to pay when they're producing. It expands the amount of drilling on federal lands, open up more lands to produce more. And I think as the economy slows down as well, that's going to have an impact on the demand for oil and gas. So it's very possible that oil could continue to drop below $50 a barrel, which is really unheard of in this century.
And we've been talking a lot about the one big beautiful bill, as the president calls it. That also, we should say, does heap trillions of dollars of new debt onto the economy. What is the impact of that in the long term? Because a lot of talk about shrinking the debt, but actually it's really going the opposite direction.
It is, and I think that's one of the big drawbacks with this mega bill is the trillions of dollars it's going to add to the federal debt. And I think, when we looked at this bill and why we NTU supported it, it's because we couldn't afford a major tax increase at the end of this year. So now we have to pivot away from issuing new debt and putting things on the credit card that we can't pay for. There's an appropriations process happening right now in the Congress where they're going to decide over the next 12 months how we're going to spend taxpayer dollars across the federal government. Right now, the federal government runs about a $2 trillion annual deficit. That's huge. We have a $38 trillion debt load. And why is this all important? Why should working class people care about the debt and the deficits that we issue? The more debt that we issue, the more the Federal Reserve has to print money. The more money the Federal Reserve has to print, the more it degrades our paychecks and inflation remains high. So as much as, this problem around tariffs is increasing prices, a large part of it revolves around this huge debt and deficit situation that is not going to get resolved anytime soon. So the sooner we can get our fiscal house in order, the better it'll be for working class Americans to have to keep their paychecks in their pockets and not have the hidden tax of inflation eat it away.
And of course, speaking of the Fed, we're going to be watching for a likely interest rate cut coming from the Fed. Tommy Aiello with the National Taxpayers Union. Tommy, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.